Hello there, welcome to my channel. My name is Bryan Lomax, and if you're not new to my channel, you may have recently watched my reviews for The Hitcher and The Hitcher 2. I know that The Hitcher, the 1986 film, is one of my favourite movies of all time. I think it's a classic of the 80s, one of the best movies of the 80s. And the sequel was, well, it was the sequel. We get a remake in 2007 with Sean Bean taking over the Rutger Hauer role. And yeah, some differences being made to the plot. Not a right lot of differences, it's got to be said. The great invention of this remake is that rather than one sole character that we see all of this stuff unfolding through the eyes of, we get two. Yeah, so we get this boyfriend and girlfriend, this couple moving across country, and stuff starts to happen to them. You know, they come across this Hitcher, played by Sean Bean, who turns their life into an absolute nightmare. As I say, you've seen the original, you get the gist. It's just here they try to do things a little bit different. The question is, does that difference add value to the story, or does it not? And the answer to that, as I'm sure you can imagine and expect me to say at this point, is that no, it does not add value. In most circles, I think it's generally regarded that this remake is very much inferior to the original. Now, when I first saw this, when it came out of the cinema back in 2007, I was definitely one of those people who not only felt that this was inferior to the original, I hated it. I just felt like it offered nothing of value and that it actually took away from the original movie. Not in the sense that, oh no, now the original's ruined, I can't watch it ever again. Of course I can. The original's still a classic, it's still what it is, and I'll just stick with that. It adds nothing by having this couple, and as I say, it detracts in a major way. So Jim Halsey, the character played by C. Thomas Howell in the original, everything in the original was told through his perspective, you know, like right down to the murders. If his character didn't see the murder happening, we didn't see it happening, you know? So it was that's how much the story was kind of portrayed through the eyes of this character. It made you invested in him. It made you kind of root for him. In this film, I don't think like director Dave Meyers seems to know who his main character is. Obviously he sets it up as sort of Jim Halsey, although, you know, obviously he's got the girlfriend, so they're both kind of the main character. But if you're a fan of the original, you come to this, then you know there's Jim Halsey, he's our hero, and that's not really the case. In the original movie, Jim Halsey starts off the film as this wet behind the ears, naive young man, talking about his, you know, my mom never told me to do this. And he ends up being Judge Dredd. You know, he gets to the end of the film, the original, and he becomes judge, jury, and executioner because he has to. He goes from being one way to another way. His character arc is very definite. Now, the only journey we see the main characters in this film go on is a literal journey, a road trip, because by the end of the film, they are barely any different to how they were at the beginning of the film. You got the girlfriend character, Grace, played by Sophia Bush, who, honest to God, I believe she is only in this film because of her looks. I don't think her acting ability in this film is a valid reason as to why she should be here. And I think the dialogue they give her really doesn't help. But I don't like her character. I see a lot of people on things like Letterboxd, IMDb, like really rating the film, and most of that is just like, oh, Sophia Bush, she's such a goddess. And it's like, no, she looks pretty, and women who look pretty are a dime a dozen. If you're going to stick them forefront at the centre of a movie, I also want them to be able to act. I also want them to be able to convince me that they can go Sarah Connor at the drop of a hat towards the end of the film, which they tried to do in this, but fail miserably. I'm not convinced at all. At the start of the film, she's the one who's being quite hard-nosed about not picking up this Hitcher. You don't know who he is. He could be a psychopath for all we know. And she's right. So her suspicions are confirmed, and then at the end of the film, she kills him. There's not a right lot of character journey there, you know, in comparison to the original, and they only prop up the beliefs of her character by having the Jim Halsey character be this kind of, again, starts off a bit wet behind the ears, a bit naive, whatever, bit softer, a bit more caring, I would say. You know, the fact that he wants to help a stranger. You know, the fact that he does want to check out the guy he just nearly mowed down on the road to see if he's all right. But no, the girlfriend says, you don't know who he is. He could be a psycho. Get going. So he gets going. And it's just like, eventually, yeah, he gives this guy a lift. And it's like, I feel like all the way through this film, this guy is criticised and made to seem like the lesser of the two people because of a part of his humanity that actually makes him human, you know, the looking out for others, the making sure people are okay. Whereas she is this character who's like, no, don't pick him up. I don't care who he is. We don't know the situation, but I'm just going to instantly classify this guy as a psychopath. So let's get the heck out of here. And her suspicions are confirmed. So there's absolutely no reason for her to have any other outlook in life by the end of the film. In fact, her outlook that she started with is only cemented. So now there's no way in hell she'll ever pick anyone up, even if they look pretty normal. So it's just like there's no change there in the character. There's only kind of just taking the character she is and making her even more cemented, even more entrenched in the position that she started with, and at the expense of the boyfriend character.
What else was I supposed to do? How was I supposed to know he was a sick lunatic?
You could have just listened to me.
At the one moment in the film when, you know, like the Jim Halsey, spoiler by the way, but yeah, Jim Halsey basically gets Jennifer Jason Leigh. If you've seen the original, you know what I'm talking about. He gets Jennifer Jason Leigh, and then we have a scene in the film in which really it should have been Sophia Bush's character, Grace, confronting the Hitcher. There should have been something there between her and the Hitcher that allowed for some character development there. But as I say, this film doesn't seem to know who its main character is, because all of a sudden you've got this crappy version of the Estridge character. Again, Estridge was this cop in the original film. He did what he needed to do. They didn't try and make him into a bigger character that had scenes that didn't need to be there. Whereas with this one, we get Martin McDonagh playing Estridge, and they try and bump up his scene count. They try and give him more to do. But the stuff they give him more to do amounts to nothing more than just giving him screen time. And some of that screen time, i.e. the scene I'm just talking about, which is this, you know, once the Hitcher's been caught, he's in a police station waiting to be transported, and Estridge goes to see him, and they have a bit of a confrontation. And all of a sudden you're left thinking, okay, so Estridge is now the main protagonist towards against the Hitcher, or antagonist towards the Hitcher. It's like you're giving the characters that shouldn't have anything to do something to do that actually renders what they're doing meaningless, because they're not the people we've been following. And then you give the characters that we have been following nothing to do, when actually giving them this particular scene would enrich their character and give them a bit more growth. It makes zero sense. As I say, it's the worst thing about this film is the character development. There is none, okay? All the characters in this are just essentially one way, and by the time we get to the end of the film, they're either dead or they're just even more how they were at the beginning of the film. We even get a scene at some point during the film when Jim Halsey almost apologises for having that level of humanity and tells the Grace character, the Sophia Bush character, that she was right all along. He's apologising to her for not being a douchebag. He's apologising to her for having some humanity, for giving a toss about other people. And then we, as the viewers, are supposed to be happy with that, as she essentially gives him a pat on the head and says, it's okay. Now go fetch me a water, bitch. This same woman, the Sophia... that character's so annoying. Oh, man. So Grace is essentially... Again, spoilers. But Grace is responsible for Estridge getting killed. It's like... There's no responsibility. There's no ownership here from this character about what she does or says. She just goes through life believing she's right and having no one to challenge her by the end of the film because they're all dead. Mostly because of her. You got Estridge who gets killed, and like surely from a writing standpoint, you know, like just as the Hitcher is about to take out Estridge, surely if you want to endear us in any way, shape or form to this Grace character, at least have her save Estridge, you know? She's responsible for him getting in this predicament to begin with. At least have her save him and correct one mistake she's made. But no, instead we go from the violence perspective. Hey, let's see someone's brains get blown out, and then we'll have the Sarah Connor moment, which, again, I just don't buy into at all. I'm totally unconvinced. Sean Bean is okay as the Hitcher. I remember him being pretty terrible, to be honest, back when I watched it, but I think I was just so against the film by that point. By the time, you know, he started really getting up to stuff, I'd checked out. But actually, you know what? He's not bad here. He's no Rutger Hauer, don't get me wrong. No one's going to replace Rutger Hauer when it comes to this role because of what he did with it. But given that he's in this inferior version anyway, there's only so much you can do. The violence towards the end of the film, again, as I say, we're seeing all these really graphic scenes. I mean, by 2007 standards, I don't know. It's just, to me, it felt overly graphic. Not because, I'm looking at it and going, oh, that's so disgusting, I don't want to see the violence. But just because from the perspective aspect, the perspective side of things, as I say, going back to that original, everything was seen from Halsey's perspective. If he didn't see the murder, we don't see the murder. So here, when we see all this stuff like happening in the van at the end, when the Hitcher slits the guard's throat, it feels like violence has been thrown in your face for the sake of it. It's not there for a purpose. It's not there to kind of put us into the shoes of the central character, because the central character isn't even there. So there's no reason to have it beyond saying, hey, look, Hitcher's a violent dude and this is really bloody and sick. And it's like, all right, great. It's great for your early noughties slasher fan that doesn't really have any inclination about watching something with real character development and a good story and a genuine perspective from a filmmaker who knows what they're doing. It's just, oh, you got blood, you got violence, you got a girl in it who looks pretty fit and she's in like a short skirt, yeah, that'll do me. Now, all that having been said, the noughties kind of 20-year-old something in me that, did kind of like slasher flicks of this ilk back then. The only reason I didn't like this one is because, as I say, I was such a big fan of the original. Now, I have to come to this and think, okay, if the original never existed, if I didn't know it existed, okay, and this is the one I saw, would I like it? Now, the answer would be yes, kind of. I think it was okay. Like, I'm not rushing back to see it anytime soon. It's just you kind of bog standard kind of slasher, and it's like, yeah, it's serviceable. I couldn't really tell you much about the character kind of journeys, as I've already stated the reasons why, because there is none. But it passed the time. It's mercifully short. You know, it's an 80-minute film. I think 5 minutes of that might even be credits, to be honest. But it's a really short film, so it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's just unremarkable. I can watch it just to have a bit of fun, but the fact that I know the original exists is always going to be niggling at the back of my mind. And if again, as I say, that's all it boils down to. If I'd never seen the original, didn't know it existed, I could probably raise this to a 3-star movie. But I do know the original exists, and I know that this is inferior from a writing standpoint, from a directing standpoint, from an acting standpoint, from a cinematography standpoint, it is inferior. Without the original, I might bump this to a 3-star film. As it is, I'm going to go with a 2.5, and I am being generous there. You know, given the rant that I've just gone on, I am definitely being generous with a 2.5 out of 5. But yeah, it looks pretty. The actors look pretty. That's probably all they've got, to be honest. But there you go. The Hitcher, 2007, 2.5 out of 5 from me. But what about you? Are you one of those people? Please don't be one of those people who actually thinks that this is better than a 1986 film. If so, please leave your comments down below. Let me know your reasons why. Thank you for watching this video, and until next time, cracking.